Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. With me this week, of course, is Mr. Matt Patrick. Matt, welcome.
What's up, buddy?
Doing well, man. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me again.
It's part of the rotation. Your name came up, so you get to speak into a microphone this week.
I love it.
Congratulations.
Everybody loves to hear me speak, I'm sure.
You know what? We get a lot of fan mail where people are asking for your autograph. They want pictures. You're starting to get noticed out in public.
Big deal.
This is the One Step Better podcast. Helping small businesses make wins each and every week. This week we're going to continue through the discussion that we've been talking about here over the past couple weeks in that whole hiring employees and trying to find a competitive advantage, if you will, when it comes to making a fun place to work for employees. In that, and we've talked some other episodes on this before, but having remote employees has really changed the game for a lot of companies from the standpoint of it's more in vogue now to have employees that are working for you but not physically located where you're at, or maybe in the same office building or even in the same town, state. It's more in vogue, but it's also there's been a lot of technology that has been thrown at this. There's full companies that are centered upon providing solutions to equip remote workforces. In the past, we've talked a lot about some of the things you have to be aware of from a compliance position, things of that nature with remote employees. So we don't want to jump too far into that. But from our perspective, what we do really well is we help support the back office for a lot of companies across the country. And we do that through the lens of accounting services, payroll services, full, employee workforce type solutions. And so, from some perspective, we have a little bit of history here that I think lends itself to this conversation. Before we do that, I want to know, when you were a kid growing up, who was somebody, whether it was an athlete, I don't know, movie star, or somebody around the block, anybody in the world, who was somebody that you looked up to as a kid or you wanted to emulate?
The first one I remember is George Brett. So
that's he's the guy that ran down the pitcher, or
he
was the Royals guy, right?
Royals guy, yeah, third baseman, Hall of Famer. 1980 was when I was about 6-ish years old. The first time I remember really baseball, and he was trying to bat 400. So that was what I remember the most. And they were in the playoffs against the Yankees and stuff. And then 85 against the Cardinals, and I just kind of always I played third base. I wore number 5. It was all kind of stuff like that.
It was all because of him?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite players growing up was Darryl Strawberry. I liked him.
He just spoke
Ricky
at my
Henderson.
high school.
I liked him.
Darryl Strawberry was the chapel speaker at my high school I went to at the FCA. He is born again Christian now, and him and his wife spoke about all his struggles with drugs and all stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had a rough life. He had a rough life.
Yeah, he grew up in the projects of Tampa. Him and Doc Gooden together, basically.
Oh man, back in the day.
Yep.
I liked, we talked about how X-Men was my favorite Saturday morning cartoon growing up. Wolverine was my favorite X-Men, and so I always wanted to be Wolverine. Not a real life person, but that's who I wanted to be growing up.
In the comics, they talk about it's really painful for the bones to come out, but in the movies, it's like razor blade looking things where he's like bionic. Yeah. It's not the same, right?
I never read the comics. I have no idea.
So you just know.
I only know from the cartoons and the movies.
Okay.
And so, if the comics say something like,
okay. Yeah.
Then
Hugh Jackman's
go for it.
Jack.
I am not.
That's all I know.
And he can also sing and dance.
Dude's super talented.
Yeah. Who do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman.
My wife wants to go. She listens to this podcast, and so she's going to use this against me. But my wife wants to go see Hugh Jackman in New York right now.
Music Man, yeah.
Because he's in Music Man.
I want to go see that too.
So
maybe I'll take your wife.
Yeah, there you go.
The high school too. They did Music Man. One of my junior senior year. It was really good. I mean, we had a lot of talented people. I was not in it. I have no talent for music or any other creative abilities. So no.
Yeah,
but I did go. It's good to see.
We did a good job acting on our podcast. So
I act like I know something, maybe.
All right, let's jump into it. This episode of One Step Better is brought to you by Works, a team of payroll and HR experts who help businesses with outsourced HR, payroll, and human capital management solutions. Works is software and service, combining awesome people with the best technology to help you and your team get one step better every day. Check out our website, works.com, to explore more employer resources. Having remote employees has really changed the game for a lot of companies. You know, one of the struggles that I think people have a lot of times is if I hire somebody that's not, sitting in a desk or cubicle across from me, how do I even know that they're working? And how can I be certain that they're actually doing their job? And so today I want to talk to you a little bit of when it comes specifically to those remote back office employees that are supporting a workforce that may be on-site or they may be decentralized. What are some things to consider whenever we're bringing employees on in those positions, and what are some ways that we can hold them accountable? And I don't want to jump the shark too much, but make sure that they actually are working instead of just twiddling their thumbs. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Here's a fun, at least it was interesting to me, a fun story that I heard. So I was listening to a podcast. I'm not going to name the podcast, but in that podcast, this is the first time I've ever been exposed to this. And it was after COVID started, where everybody was kind of going to that remote model. And a guy was calling in asking for advice on something completely unrelated. But in the details of it, one of the things that he brought up is that he has about 6 different full-time jobs right now. Well, how in the world do you have 6 full-time jobs? Well, the answer was, I can do 6 full-time jobs because they don't know when I'm working or what I'm working on, and I can get 6 salaries from these 6 full-time jobs. And I never, up to that point, I never thought that a person may actually apply for and get multiple full-time jobs. But they're all remote. He's working from, his home office and just jumps from one to the other based on need. That is scary to me to think that, we may have employees out there that are working full-time jobs,
Right,
but are really only putting in a few hours a week. So when it comes to back office employees and having remote folks, where do you as a business owner, as a leader, draw the line to say, you know what, this is what we're going to have as our policy for what we will allow and not allow? Is there certain positions in the back office that you say they have to be on site, or others that could be remote? How do you even navigate that world?
We've struggled that a little bit. I mean, my first went to sales. We have people that are in the lead gen business, trying to find us appointments to meet with new prospective clients. And I do find that is a position that I think it matters when you're around somebody. It creates energy. You can hear calls, what went well, what didn't go well. I also think that it is one of those things where it would be easy to get distracted in that role at home, or it's not easy just to keep hearing no every day, every time you call. And so I think that's a role that we struggled with, the idea of people working remotely on. We also have administrative roles in our internal office for just the physical document movements of stuff coming into the office or out of the office. So think about it in terms of distribution, basically. I find that role would be hard to outsource unless we decided to do everything digitally, which we could do if we force that upon our clients, but our clients still aren't there yet. I think about, like, in this area, FedEx has said, hey, we're still going to work remotely forever. And that's their tax department for corporate, or their, they may have administrative departments that are strictly remote, but they do have physical things that people have to show up for, that those people are not remote. So it is one of the things I've struggled with, that where's the line on how much to let them work from home or not. I mean, I think we've done is just been kind of flexible with it. Hey, if you're going to have a planning day, or you're going to be doing a lot of what I'd say is digital work, and you're in that SDR seat today, I think we've had some times where, like, it's fine, take a half day or full day work from home, that's fine. But the reality is, I want you really as much as possible in the office.
You want the synergy that's going to be created by having people around each other.
There's so much energy and synergy that can happen with just being proximity. I think it's the same way in accounting a little bit. We have remote people there. We do a really good job of being intentional and trying to make things connect. But overhearing conversations and be able to just ask a quick question, you're not spinning your wheels. Those things are important, and I think it's something we have to. It's hard to know what the right answer is. There is what I guess I'd say.
At what point did you start to think that having a remote employee would be a viable solution?
We've had a remote employee now for 9 years, so that started out of necessity. We had an employee that was here, Jen. She'd been here for 3 years. husband gets a new job in Florida. We like her. We think she's really talented. It did change how we had to handle documents. So we'd always before that did after work scanning in our world, which would be we would turn the tax information into a digital work paper after we did the work. Well, that goes out the window when you're talking about having someone work remotely. We didn't want to ship documents down to them and worry about stuff getting lost. So it became a front-end scanning process. It just made us rethink how we want to do that. There was some costs involved in that for us. We had to pay for that time to both scan everything on the front end, and you're also not getting the filter of what we need and what we don't need, so it has to scan everything. But you get the advantage of a legacy employee who's really good, who can still work with us, knows our systems, knows our processes, and has grown with us. I mean, so she was a brand, she just made manager, I think, when she left or was about to make manager. Maybe it was senior. But, I mean, she's done a great job of balancing that. She works part-time non-tax season and full-time during tax season. She works really odd hours. One of the things we did with that, though, is we paid her on production. So we didn't care when or she worked or how she worked because it needed to be flexible for her, but we needed to make sure she was compensated for what she was doing. So we paid her on her production worked, and we give her the grader of that annually. So she clocks in and clocks out on a weekly basis, and we pay her that. And then at the end of the year, we look at her production versus her time, and we give her the check. She gets a nice check every year because she's efficient. And she does a good job with her clients. And so that works out well for everybody involved. But I think that's some of the workarounds we do to make that work best for us. Production pay fixes some of that, but not every role is eligible for production pay because it's hard to tie production to dollars,
especially when you start to get into those back office roles.
Correct.
How much is my internal accountant or my AP clerk or my
correct
AR
but
person.
what the tasks they have to get done are. So as long as those tasks are getting done and nothing's changing there, and you're measuring work getting done, I think that's probably a good way to think about it.
I find that if you have decent performance management processes or even a culture of accountability, that it is easier for business leaders to make a shift to allow remote employees. If you have poor accountability or poor performance management processes or none, it's going to be internally for that business leader. It's hard for them to make that switch because their current performance management is I can look around my office and see who's here, and which is a false flag. It's
Correct.
Just because I have many stories where I've been in a job, me myself, where I was there and I was not there.
Yeah,
I could think back over my working career, and that's happened, no doubt. Me
too.
Physical presence does not mean that a person is performing. But if you have solid, if I know that, hey, you know what, I have 100 invoices a week, and my AP person is processing all 100 of those a week, whether they're in my building or not in my building, I can generally expect that, they're doing their job.
We have to still have the same accountability of, I don't want to have employees that don't trust. So if I don't trust you to work outside the office, I shouldn't trust you to work in my office. That shouldn't change. If I have to put proximity to that barrier of trust just got blew up, and that means I have a problem.
Yeah.
And it's usually tied to, I don't trust that you're going to get the work done that you said you're getting done. I usually believe that you're going to until you stop doing it. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to manage that if I don't know what you're doing. And so that becomes a challenge as an owner or any leader or manager to trust your team to know they're going to get the work done. And there's accountability to, hey, this was your list of things getting done. You've agreed to this, agreed upon list that you can get this done. Get it done.
Yeah. Once you lose trust in your team, it's
correct.
It's hard to.
You're not going to get it back.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have the time to just stand over their shoulder all days. Are you actually working? Yep. And if you had to do that, that's probably a good indication that person is not right for the role.
I mean, we've talked about this in previous episode, the remote work team, how to make that work. I mean, it really starts with communication, and we beat on it over and over again, but overly communicate creates clarity, keeps everybody in the loop. I mean, we have annoying things that we do. I'm sure some people think are annoying. I need them. Like if I ask you something and I want you to acknowledge that I saw that you saw it, that's just, we put a thumbs up into Slack, or just how we communicate to make sure that it's a two-way channel. Everybody knows that everything is on the same page. That creates I don't have to worry about chasing that down or thinking about that later. And that is something that I've talked about that I need. And you're like, I don't need that. I trust that you're going to do it. And I just like, well, that's fine. I got 9 of those things. I'll forget that I'm like, crap, I didn't even follow up on that. So,
so if let's say I'm a home care company and I have a decentralized workforce already, my employees, my caregivers are going out to my customers. Maybe it's or it's normally going to be in their home, sometimes at facilities. I already have a model here that supports not having a big centralized office.
absolutely.
Bringing on back office people can lend itself to that. Where do you think, if I currently have all my back office people inside of a building, but I'm, wanting to think about the idea of letting some people maybe even just work from home, same city, same place.
Let's say it's forced upon you either through a pandemic.
Where do you start?
Do they have the dedicated workspace to be productive from home? That's where I start. If they're trying to go home and they have 3 kids, they're trying to homeschool and work a full-time job, and their spouse is working from home, I think that's going to be really challenging for somebody to work from home and be as productive as you want them to be. That's what forced a lot of people in the pandemic to, I'd say, not be as productive as they could be, is because, okay, I'm not the only one working from home. My kids are now at home, and my spouse is working from home, and it's just hard to find dedicated, quiet workspace to get stuff done. But let's say that is true. I have a dedicated workspace. Then it's just making sure that we're connected communication-wise to make it as productive as possible. So, how are you guys communicating internally? How are you setting up internal meetings when you need to have a pop-in meeting or a formal process? How do you measure and account for all your tasks getting completed? Like, how do you make sure you know what's assigned to whom? I mean, the physical movement of physical paper, if you're still moving paper around an office, which happens a lot with home healthcare, I'm assuming. Just that whole process of making sure you're thinking through how the logistics of both paper and communications are going to travel through the office would be where I would really start. Yeah. Technology fixes some of that stuff, but
you got to understand what your process is before you start putting.
Yeah, I mean, like say it's okay, your care worker was out and they've entered stuff in the EMR, or your ERP system, and they've captured their time they were on site. That process hits your computer at home. That's not going to make any difference. Hey, they're still filling out manual timesheets, and those physical timesheets are showing up in an office, and then they're somehow getting to you remotely. That's a whole different ballgame. Yeah. So you really have to think through how that physical process is going to be done remotely. I would imagine in today's world, people have already started thinking through how to make that stuff digitally, because it's been forced upon us if you weren't already there. But I'd be wanting to make sure that I have those things really dialed in. And we go back to communications over and over again. I would make sure I understand how we're communicating as a team. Like my phone system
over and over again.
Phones, Slacks, Team, Zoom, all that stuff has to be working. Everybody knows how to use it. Is super important.
Yeah. So you talked about whenever Jen with us started going remote, the thing that you really were forced to think through is we have deliverables that are coming to this office or paper that's coming to this office, and Jen needs that stuff.
Yep.
And so what does that process look like to get that to her? I know that there's still a lot of people in that home care space that relies on the passing of paper.
Yep.
And it's coming from one desk to the next desk to the next desk. And you really have to think, if I want to go remote in my back offices, I really have to think through, how do I get these items from a sheet of paper on somebody's desk to my computer systems in a digital fashion?
And I would say that's not a remote problem.
That's
a business problem.
You should have that.
You should have that figured out already, right? I mean, that's not a problem I'm going to have with. If I'm having that problem remotely, I'm having that problem in the office too. People are out sick that day. Someone lost that piece of paper. Someone didn't come back to the office after they went to the appointment. Somebody keyed something wrong from the one document to the next. All those things are going to cause problems.
Yeah. I agree. That's maybe an indicator of a bigger issue if you're still.
And we have clients that are still that way. I mean, we got a client right now going through that process of digitizing. They're going from paper timesheets, where it's a pool service company. They enter timesheets daily. They bring them to the office. They manually enter them and manually invoice, and they're switching over systems. It's a big endeavor for them, but it's game changing for them.
Well, the biggest pushback I get whenever we're talking to home care people about the physical papers is compliance related. There's a lot of people out there that think that, because true to them, they will have, state auditor, whoever, come in at unannounced times and, all right, we're going to go through this. They have the schedule stuff, but they also have the random stuff. and they think that I have to have that file cabinet that's in this office for them to be ready to go at it. And the reality is you have to have the information. It doesn't have to be the physical file cabinet in the office is not the magic pill. It's having quick and easy access to the documents.
I mean, we've met with many clients over the years that still physically print out bank statements
that
they have access to, put them in a binder, and they never open the binder again. And they're still doing that today. And it's just like, why are you doing that? Like, download it and you have a PDF, or more than likely most banks are giving you at least a couple of years now. We save all of ours in PDF, but like the reality is like going, man,
you got to put it in that fireproof safe.
Fireproof safe. Yeah, no kidding.
It's in the back of the closet.
We had a safe at home that my parents had, and as part of the remodel work that we're doing now, it's broken. We don't know the combination. There's nothing in it. I'm like,
are you sure there's nothing in it?
Yeah, I'm sure. I can't. It's open, but I can't set it because I don't have the combination, and I can't move it. So the contractors had to like get some extra help, and they wheeled it away to the. But I'm like, man, that safe was like 4 billion pounds. It had like nothing in it though.
Whenever I bought the house that we're in right now, the previous owner had a big gun safe in one of the closets.
Comes with the house. And
he was like, "Hey, I'll make you a deal on that gun safe because I do not want to move it."
And you're like, "I'll give it. You can give it to me."
I said, "I don't want your gun safe. You can take it with you." And yeah, he ended up.
So it's still in your house?
No, it's he did take it. He did take it, but I mean, it was big.
So. I go back to the idea of this podcast, and it's the idea of, remote back office and in-person workforce. The reality of this is, regardless of where your people are, you need to be thinking through your processes of how you're communicating, are you creating clarity, and how are you holding people accountable. That can be done a lot of different ways, and physical proximity does not need to be one of the ways that those three things can be fixed.
What I wrote down in my sheet of paper here is that systems, processes, communication, and clarity trump location.
Correct.
Location is great, but location, if you think about how all this started, it was just normal. I had a office. I need people in that office to do the work. Well, if anything, today's world shows us that we don't necessarily have to have people in our office to do the work that I need them to do. However, if I don't have a good system and process, and I'm not communicating clearly and communicating often, then I'm hosed either way.
Correct.
Because the people in my office are going to struggle to know what to do just as much as if they weren't in my office. Maybe it's magnified, but it's still a struggle.
And I think that's
those things. Location's not going to matter.
That's one of the challenges right now. We've looked at office space, our space. We think we have a couple years till we're out of space with it, and I'm like going, do I need another big office? Do I need a bigger office? What's that look like? What does the workforce look like as we go forward? The internet in general and technology has decentralized our need for service-based businesses, or a lot of businesses in our services, to not be physical proximity.
Right. I'm going to shift gears just for a second. We're not going to get too far down this rabbit hole, but we talk about this, and the reality is a conversation that you and I have a lot internally is we don't want to move to too great of a remote workforce. And so another thing that you have to consider is you might have the tools in place, and you may be able to do that from a systems and processes standpoint. That, in our world, we use kind of a hybrid approach. You have some days at home or remote, some days not remote. But the other thing that you have to consider there is how do people being together actually impact what you talked about earlier with using synergy of team, how that is going to influence the greater organization. If I'm in a home care space where I'm already decentralized, that does not matter as much. If I'm in a space like we are, where we do stay centralized and culture matters greatly here, and teamwork matters greatly, and being around each other matters greatly, then those things start to play into it. And so we're not suggesting that remote employees is the magic pill that's going to cure all back office evils, but it should be an option that you're willing to consider, especially here in today's world where you have the technology able to do it. Thanks for listening to the One Step Better podcast. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to listen to us. I'd really appreciate it if you would take some time to rate us 5 stars on your podcast player of choice, and make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you never miss out on another episode. Thanks, and have a great day.